We'll go ahead and get started here. So again, my name is Alex Oliver, and I'm a financial advisor with First National Corporation. We're running our financial bootcamp series here in affiliation with Schwartz & Schwartz Accountants. I've been doing that now for 3 years, and this is the last installment of our spring season's webinars. Hopefully you've been able to join us in the past, but today we're going to be going over the first million is the hardest, how envisioning the long-term helps you today. And I must have come up with a good title for this webinar because we had a lot of registrants here, and I've actually had a lot of people asking me about this webinar as the weeks have gone on. Not so interested in maybe some of the more technical ones that we've talked about in the past, but today this one gets everybody kind of excited, which is fun to see. I have a lot to say on this topic, and hopefully can offer you some perspective from working with some of my clients about creating a financial plan. So as we get started here and we go into it, just as a quick reintroduction, First National Corporation, my firm, is what's called a registered investment advisor, and we provide independent and unbiased advice. We're located down on the South Shore. And RIA, we essentially act as a fiduciary for the clients that we work with, meaning we have no conflict of interest. We don't have our own mutual funds or products or anything like that. People just hire us for advice and to manage their assets. We have two sides to our practice, the wealth management side, which is where I spend most of my time doing financial plans for my clients. But then also a dedicated retirement planning practice where now I think we're actually more like 70 retirement plans, whether it's a 401k, a simple IRA, or a cash balance plan. And I work with a lot of small business owners on that side as well to get their retirement plans in place and talk to their employees at their own respective businesses. So that puts me in a pretty unique position to give you a lot of different perspectives for financial plans. And these boot camps that we've done so far, feel free to go back and watch the recordings of them. We went over an investment vision of 2021 back in January, which actually I think has held up pretty well. I was just writing up our newsletter for our first quarter recap, and I think that has held so far. So feel free to go back and watch that. The state of socially responsible investments we did back in February. Budgeting for primary and vacation homes, that was a big topic in 2020 with COVID-19. So we had a lot to say about that. And then today, obviously, our long-term financial plan here. So to see any of these recordings, you can visit schwartzaccountants.com/events, where they've done a great job with their website design skills and really organizing all of these webinars that we've done over the years. So whatever topic you have in mind, there's a lot. I think these are all on YouTube. So it's not like you have to sign up for anything like that. You can get a glass of wine and go through every single one. And I think you'll learn almost everything that I know. So that's a great resource for you to check out there. And just as a little ideas to the different topics, I mean, we go into everything. We've done everything over the last 3 years, everything from how to FIRE, becoming financially independent, looking at your 401k, how that stacks up against other 401k plans, estate planning. We've done college planning, obviously lots of tax planning, different webinars here. So again, really encourage you to check these out. Watch them at 1.5 speed so you can really whip through them and get a lot of different information there. So, before we start, obviously, again, I always want to go over this disclosure here to consult an advisor or conduct your own due diligence before making any financial decisions. Every financial plan I write is completely different. Even if I had two couples who are making the same amount of money, have the same assets, they likely have different financial plans because they have different preferences or different thoughts about how to manage money, what they're comfortable with and what they're not. So everything I talk about today should just be seen as entertainment. And hopefully you'll have fun here over your lunch hour, just getting these perspectives. But make sure you talk to a professional before enacting any strategies I talk about. So to give you some perspective on today's webinar, what I do every December or so as we're thinking about the webinars that are going to come up, I try to sit down and think about what I have learned or what I've seen over the last year and what can I create as a webinar to really give you my perspective, because frankly, I think I've got a pretty cool job. I work with several different clients, again, all different incomes. I've got clients that are as young as 25, and then obviously most of my typical clients are in their 50s or 60s getting ready for retirement, or they're thinking about how to leave assets behind to their children or charities or things of that nature. So they need some sort of financial plan. So when seeing all those perspectives, I get to see what different strategies out of my toolbox of 100 or 200 tools that we could use, which 3 or 4 we're going to use here, which 3 or 4 we're going to use here. And last year in particular, I really felt like I started to work with a lot of clients who I wish I had started talking to, say, 5 years ago, where maybe I would have been able to make a really big difference, because some of the strategies that we enact, sometimes it just saves them so much money or just reallocates their assets in a way that is going to accomplish their goals in a much sooner manner. And so I want to make sure with this webinar, I try to offer you those perspectives. That's kind of what the metamorphosis of this topic was to say, let's take all those conversations I've had with my clients, try to show you how this financial plan looks, how surprisingly fast some of my clients are able to accumulate assets with a good plan in place, and then really gets them in a position where they've got to figure out and make some decisions as to whether they're going to retire early or give assets away, or maybe live a little bit more lavishly now, knowing that their financial plan is in place, whatever the case may be. So my goal here is to really just articulate the value of putting that financial plan in place and revisiting that financial plan at least once a year, if not every 6 months, to make sure it's really in line with your goals here, okay? And so, the basis of this that I want to make sure I talk about, and this will just be, fodder for thought for anybody here. A lot of probably do-it-yourselfers are in this webinar, which is great. We're going to talk about how to create that financial plan, and I'm going to give you some self-help tools to be able to do that. But in order to get to that place, I'm going to talk about accumulating assets first, and the power of accumulating assets and compounding interest over time. This little quote from Albert Einstein I like. He says, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. Obviously, pays it being when you're taking on debt and paying somebody else that compound interest. So I want to start this conversation by really covering that. And this just goes over, again, an understanding of what happens when you start with a $10,000 balance and are earning an 8% interest on that. Again, in year one, we're earning that $800 or 8%. But then in year two, we've got that balance of $10,800. That gives us now interest of $864 and then $933, etc. So after about 10 years, we've more than doubled our asset base of $10,000 with increasing interest over time. Pretty straightforward. Everybody in this webinar, I think, already understands that concept. But when you're looking at $10,000, it's one thing. When you're looking at $1 million or $2 million and you're looking at time horizons of 30 or 40 or 50 years, it really is quite phenomenal for me to see as I start to work with clients. And I just have this other quote here that I like. If you ever watch Shark Tank, it's one of my favorite shows. Kevin O'Leary on that show, he says, money is my military. Each dollar is a soldier. I never send my money into battle unprepared or undefended. I send it to conquer and take currency prisoner and bring it back to me. So I like that. I like to think about that when thinking about investment strategies as well. And importantly, not losing money, not losing soldiers, if you will, and being careful about that as we think about the financial plan in general. So we'll keep these concepts in mind as we go along. One more little idea here just for you to know, and again, many of you have probably already known this, which is the rule of 72. The rule of 72 basically says that if you take the number 72 and divide it by the interest rate you hope to earn, that's going to give you the approximate number of years it will take for your investment to double. So we just saw the 8% rate of return. 72 divided by 8 is going to be something like around 9 years, and that's where we have our doubling of assets. If we have a lower interest rate, obviously it's going to take much longer for our assets to double. A higher interest rate, that's going to happen very quickly. But you're going to, again, see over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we are doubling much more quickly, and these assets are becoming, exponentially large, which, again, I think everybody already knows that, but we're just trying to set the table here as we look at this financial plan down the road. One slide that I like to use when I go to a 401k plan and I'm trying to explain to the employees there the importance of saving early and how that compound interest really helps is this slide right here. This comes from JP Morgan, where we talk about 4 different employees. We've got consistent Chloe, who starts investing at age 25, goes to 65, and they're all going to do $200 per month. Late Lila, she's going to wait 10 years. She's going to only end up saving from ages 35 to 65. Quitter Quincy is going to save from ages 25 to 35 and then just completely stop for the remainder of her life. And then Nervous Noah is going to do the right thing. He's going to save from ages 25 to 65, but he's going to keep his money in cash, and he's not going to earn a investment return that they have here of 5.75, he's instead going to earn 1.1. And so you can see the power of the compounding interest here, where consistent Chloe obviously does the best. She ends up with about $369,000. And most of that, this dark blue right here, is going to actually be investment return. And then this little portion right here, about 26% of the total is her savings. So it was that compound interest that really got her to this 368,000. Late Lila is actually in a very disadvantaged position here, because she ends up with $192,000. Now only 63% of that total is the investment return. But what I really like to point to here is Quitter Quincy, because Quitter Quincy only saves for 10 years. She ends up with $176,000 compared with Late Lila, which is pretty close. These numbers are pretty close considering the 40-year time horizon. But again, she only ended up having to save for 10 of these years, whereas Late Lila saved for 30. She missed the first 10. So Quitter Quincy, of this number, 86% of it is investment returns. So it just really shows you again how important it is for every dollar. The earlier you save it, the faster it can compound, and how big of a difference that makes. But again, saving also has to be countered with investing. And Nervous Noah here does the saving here, but ends up in the worst situation, $121,000, where the majority of it is actually savings. A very small amount of it is going to end up being investment return. So again, hopefully we've got on the same page, laying the groundwork for this webinar. Saving early, compound interest really is key. And once you understand that concept, the numbers I'm about to show you for the financial plans that I write really start to get very large very fast. Okay. So on the grander scale, when I start talking to my clients about what their goals are, some clients, if they're in really high impact positions that are very stressful, I can think of many doctors that are in positions where they're working long shifts, working many days in a row, and their financial plans may be to retire as early as possible. It is not unheard of for my clients to try and aim for an early 50s or even late 40s retirement, or at least get them to a place of what we call financial independence. Financial independence being a place where you have enough assets to spin off income that you could stop working if you wanted to and live just on the asset base that you've grown. Okay. And so when you start to look into financial independence, what you'll likely read very quickly about is the 4% withdrawal rule. So 4% basically means that if I've got this $2 million nest egg and I'm going to try to, earn 5% on the investment return and then withdraw 4%, I should stay pretty level with my assets every year. I get to that $2 million or whatever that number is for you, depending on what your spending is going to be in retirement, you might be able to live off that in perpetuity and never have to worry about working another day in your life. So this goes over an example where, again, this person starts with $2 million. They earn 5%, so they get that $100,000. They're going to withdraw 4%, so they're going to take $84,000 out of the account, and at the end of the year, they've got a balance of $2,016,000. We go to year 1 year later. Now, again, we're going to get a 5% rate of return on that, $100,800. And then our withdrawal goes up a little bit because we're taking 4% on that. We're at $84,672. But again, our nest egg is growing here. So, you get into this position, and it's sort of hard to believe in some cases for my clients, because we all know that you're not going to get a 5% investment return every year. You're going to have some years where you get a 10% investment return. You're going to have some years where you lose 10%, lose 20%. And so for retirees that were investing in COVID-19 in March of 2020, that was a really scary time for some people's portfolios. But over the long haul, you should be able to get around a 4 or 5% rate of return after you smooth out those ups and downs. And if you stick with that 4% withdrawal rate, or you just stick with it based on the balance that you have, maybe your 84,000 starts to go up and down with that as well. Just depends on how dynamic your spending strategy can be. You'll be in a pretty good place to be able to retire and feel comfortable and live off that asset base. So again, and for some of my clients, they may just have a very simple goal to sprint to that number, whatever it is. Maybe it is to get to $2 million. We get to be a little bit more technical at that point, because $2 million in an IRA is different than a $2 million balance in an investment account. The IRA, really, we can't withdraw it until age 59 and a half. There are some exceptions to that, which we do utilize. But that's high level what we might try to get to. And again, try to set the table here for what we're going to be looking at. But for some people, that might not be the right plan, and may not even be possible based on where they're at. And so what I want to, again, just start to articulate to you is a few different financial plans that I have, again, with my clients. These are actually, real. This first one's going to be a sample client here. The next two, without names, are going to be real situations that I have with my clients right now that have been fun for me to see and show you today. So this is talking about Keegan and Taylor Rosen, very typical mid-30s client, and are saving in their 401k plans. When I write a financial plan, and this is a screenshot from our software, we call it the wealth management system, I take a top-down approach with my clients, meaning that I don't really get into the weeds as to how much they're spending on a yearly basis, whether it's $1,000 a month on groceries or gas or whatever the case may be. I just try to sit down and figure out where are we actually actively saving money to, and then let's assume that you just spend the rest, whether that's taxes, living expenses, vacations, college education, whatever the case may be. And so this is a very typical example. Keegan and Taylor, they're maxing out their 401ks, but doing nothing else. No IRAs, Roth IRAs, HSAs, anything like that. So this graph shows them accumulating assets, getting into retirement where they're actually still accumulating assets to some degree, and then decumulating assets. But what I wanted to do here is just show you that, again, these clients who, in 2021 have about $343,000 in portfolio assets. Let's just kind of look at how fast this occurs. Between 2021 and 2027, we're going to take about 7 years to get to that first $1 million of portfolio assets. So to be clear, this does not include their house. This is just liquid portfolio assets. Then same thing from 2028 on, about 6 years later, we're going to get to $2 million in assets. And then it's going to take us 3 years to go to 3 years to go to 4 million, 2 years to go to 5, and then 2 years to go to 6. And then you can't really see it here, but it only takes them 1 year to go from 6 million to 7 million. So, planned savings, this column right here, it adjusts for inflation. So there is a little bit more money in there. And again, obviously these numbers are with inflation, considered in the future. But just really, again, trying to hit the point home that once you get past that first $1 million in assets, which it looks like this mid-30s couples is going to do in their early 40s, and then in their late 40s, early 50s, they're going to get to that $2 million number, and then it just goes very quickly in their 50s and 60s. And I think a lot of my clients I end up seeing in their late 40s or early 50s when they've gotten to this point and they see these numbers getting kind of big, and they're like, wow, okay, maybe we need to start thinking about retirement planning or asset strategies or tax strategies and things of that nature. And if you are in this webinar today and you're in your mid-30s, it's a good thing to see, because it's really good to sit down as a mid-30-year-old and really see like what's going to happen in the future. A lot of things can happen. People can lose their jobs and other expenses can come up. But if you can really see how this is going to play out over your lifetime, I think it could really help you to manage your life a little bit differently in your mid-30s. Maybe spend more money now, knowing that you're already on a pretty good path. And we're going to continue to talk about that concept as we go along here. So not only that, this was actually those spreadsheets were a little bit of a linear projection. They're just saving to the 401ks and nothing else, and you can see they're already in pretty good shape, based on that. But there's a lot of other things that just happen in life that are going to help to accelerate this growth in a lot of ways. So many of you, I'm sure, have student loans, car loans, mortgages that you're paying on right now, but those eventually are going to end up all coming off the books. And so most of my clients, they're already saving at least 20% of their pre-tax income. So if they're making $200,000 combined, they're saving at least $40,000. And again, that might just be the maxing out the 401k plans. But if they no longer have to pay $500 a month to their student loan or their car loan, they're probably going to take that $500 and save it, as opposed to finding something else to spend it on. So that just increases your savings rate moving forward. I have here that trained professionals are going to get promoted faster and receive higher raises. So in the United States, on average, people are going to get a raise of 3.1%. But I read a survey that said that the highest rated employees actually get a raise of about 4.6%. And what I tell my clients is that you should really try to save at least half of every new raise that you get. So if your income goes up by $10,000 pre-tax, after tax, maybe that ends up being something like $7,000. You should try to save $3,500 more than you did last year, and then maybe you find some other place to spend the other $3,500. But what you don't want to do is get into a place where your expenses are rising with your income, and now it's going to be harder to retire, and obviously you're not saving that money as well. Some children become financially independent at age 18. I wrote some because I realize not all children become financially independent at age 18, but some will. If you raise them in a certain way and you've saved for the college and they get out of college and they have a great job, maybe you end up helping them with a down payment or something like that. We'll talk about that as we go along here too. But all those expenses are going to come off the books, and that's why a lot of people in their late 40s and early 50s now all of a sudden have much more opportunity to save money because they don't have those children that they're spending all that money on, sending them to SAT prep courses or athletic events or things of that nature. Parents may cash out their home equity by downsizing or moving out of a preferred school. So, here in the Boston area, if you're living in, Lexington or something like that, you're paying for being in that school district. But again, once your children are 18, you can now move to a probably similar size house and maybe cash out $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 of equity in that house, which is now a retirement asset. So something to keep in mind there, something I commonly build into my financial plans. One spouse may sell a business, could be for 1 times up to 5 times of net profit. So that's a pretty big windfall at that point in time. There's a lot of surprise inheritances that happen with my clients when they're in their late 40s and early 50s, because, if they're financially aware, it's very likely their parents are also financially aware as well. And it's very likely they have some assets of some kind. It might only be like $100,000 or $50,000, but that's still going to speed up this whole financial plan, whatever it is. So again, routinely, I'll end up throwing something in there to my clients' financial plan so they can see, at minimum, if I inherit $100,000, how is that going to play out? And then, once a family has built up their safety net, they can invest more aggressively and withstand temporary drops. So that's very common. Again, when you're 50 and you've achieved financial independence, watching your assets go down 30%, while painful, you know that you can withstand that and wait it out. And so I do tend to find that people that have more assets just have more patience to be able to wait it out, or at least take advantage of opportunities when they arise. And we saw that in the real estate market back in 2008, where a lot of properties were able to be scooped up very cheaply and turned into rentals. And so finally, on this slide here, wealthy investors know the cost of losing money. I bolded that because here in 2021, there's been a lot of conversation about like GameStop or Bitcoin or things of that nature. And I get questions about that sometimes, but I think it's less than you would think because, for somebody who's already accumulated $2 or $3 million or $4 million, they're more worried about losing that money because, losing 50% on an investment is very hard to come back from. Losing 10% and then having it, rebound over a course of a few years, not a big deal, but losing 50% or 100% is a big deal. And so we do spend a lot of time talking about risk management strategies once you get up to this asset level, as opposed to taking gambling risks in those kinds of categories. Okay. So a lot of reasons to believe that your financial plan, may be accelerated much more quickly than you would think. And so I just want to go through a couple of examples with you and just show you again how I do this with my clients. Again, here in this wealth management system, we'll have that basic set of base facts that I outlined with that mid-30s couple. But here is where I can really start to articulate, selling a business, for example, at 1 to 5 times profits. Maybe you've got a building that the business is in that you own as well, and you're probably going to sell that and generate some additional assets. Maybe you own a property for your parents, or maybe, your child's apartment or something like that, that one day, again, you're going to sell. We can start to throw these scenarios on. We can play around with retirement ages and all that. And then we can see, here's where we were on the base facts. But then once we account for all those other different scenarios, maybe we're going to save more in the future. We can start to see this green line here and project it in this case, this person who's 40 years old, we're projecting all the way out to the year 2081. And I actually changed this from future value to present value so that way you can see the dollars accounted for inflation. So this is actually $10 million in 2021 dollars, not even inflated dollars. And I had a conversation with this 40-year-old business owner, and once we start, I think that when you're running a business and money is just going in and out, it's really hard to see that vision. But when you start to see this, and you see you're in a position where you're actually going to have a pretty significant estate, where you're again either going to spend it on yourself or leave it to your children, or it's going to go to taxes and Uncle Sam. We have some decisions to make, years in advance of when this is actually going to occur. May change how he runs his business. He may want to retire a lot earlier, hire other people within the business to create some sort of succession plan. And so this in particular was a pretty interesting conversation for me to have with them, because I do think they're going to change their business plan a little bit, knowing exactly where they stand, which is, I think, very fulfilling to see. This next couple that I have here, this is a late 60s couple, and they're thinking about retirement. They're in a place, though, where they are not working for money at this point anymore. They're just working out of interest. They just really enjoy their jobs. But once they met me, and this is now going 3 years ago when they met me, we started to really sit down and first get over that hump to make sure, okay, let's make sure that no matter how much you spend within your financial plan, you're not going to run out of money. Obviously, that's the most important thing that we could talk about here. And that wasn't very hard for this couple. You can see here on the left-hand side, I've added in on top of what their living expenses right now are. Let's just say they traveled at $100,000 per year for the next 20 years. So from ages 68 to 88, they just took these lavish vacations. Let's throw that into the financial plan. They still weren't running out of money. But what these clients were interested in hearing about was both leaving money to their children. So we've got $30,000 gifts to their son and daughter all the way to age 100. That's the gift exclusion number that you can give to anybody without using your full estate exclusion. So that's where that $30,000 figure comes from. And then also giving to charity. And so the way I posed it to this set of clients was, out of your base of assets, what amount do you want to go to charity and what amount do you want to go to your children? And I think like many parents, they thought, well, we want a certain amount to go to our children, enough so that way they can feel comfortable, but not enough so that way they don't have to ever work again. So we came up with a number that they wanted to leave to their children, and these $30,000 gifts are the best way to do that. Thereafter, most of that is actually going to end up going to charity. And that's fine and dandy. I think a lot of people in this webinar might think, well, I'll just worry about that when I'm 85 or 90 years old. But what we really started to figure out with them was, if they didn't donate to charity now, what there was going to happen later in retirement was that they were going to get killed with taxes. There are what are called required minimum distributions from IRAs starting at age 72. And those IRAs are going to have huge tax bills associated with them. So the plan that we drew up actually involved them donating $350,000 per year in their last 5 years of working. Because while they're working, they're still in a very high tax bracket. Whereas when they stop working, they're going to be in a very low tax bracket. So if we would have waited until after they retired, they just wouldn't have gotten as big of a tax benefit from those donations. So why not make them now when you're still making a lot of money and save a bundle on taxes? In this client's case, we're using what's called a donor advised fund. So we can donate it to the fund. We don't have to distribute it to charity just yet, but we've got this fund that's going to have over $1 million in it that over their lifetime, they can start to spread around $50,000 here, $50,000 there for their various charitable desires. And so that was a very fulfilling plan to be able to enact. And now they get major refunds on their tax return by being able to do that. And then finally, you can see here, there's a couple other knobs here for $100,000 gifts to charity. This is actually coming from those IRAs that I mentioned are going to have major tax consequences. We can do what's called a qualified charitable distribution and donate up to $100,000 per year directly from the IRA to the charity. Once again, saving on income taxes. And then when we're thinking about the assets that are going to go to charities, that's the joint account and the IRA, with the money going to the children, that might be Roth IRAs, for example, that we leave behind, or other just cash assets that we're going to end up donating to them. Okay. So again, just trying to lay the land here that when you're able to see this, we started with a mid 30s couple. Now we're going to a late 60s couple. When you start to look at this 20 or 30 years down the road, you can see there might be problems that come into play. Problems being more taxes than necessary in a lot of cases. And if we can take some actions today to mitigate those, you might actually get more money into the people's hands that you want that money to go to, your children, charities, things of that nature, then again, the Uncle Sam who's going to take your money at the end. So as we kind of wrap up here, just want to make sure I give you some perspective on what a financial plan really can allow you to do. Once we go through this financial analysis, which is my job, it's my job to take all these numbers together and tell you what's possible and what's not. But you might decide that you're going to retire earlier than you plan to. You might live in another city, state, or country because maybe now you're only going to work 2 or 3 days a week. Maybe have a little bit less patient count, or whatever the case may be. Take longer vacations, things of that nature. You might decide now that you're going to help your children with college, home purchases, or wedding expenses. So if you're maybe not so willing to do that today because you're worried about your own retirement, look at your financial plan, and maybe you can help your children have a more financially stable set of circumstances today than as opposed to waiting until they're 35 years old when all that really heavy set of expenses are coming due. Maybe help them now knowing that you're going to be okay in the future. That's definitely a big consideration for my clients. Obviously, you can spend more on hobbies or vacations. I think a lot of my clients, there's a few of them that maybe are just too frugal, frankly. They're too fixated on the financially independent number. I need to get to $2 million, or I need to get to $3 million. And then they get there, and as I've outlined, there's so many reasons why they may just blow past that number, and it's hard to get people to spend more money at that time. So maybe just see the plan, and now you can say, I can buy that. I'm a cyclist, so buy that bicycle that you've been looking at really hard that you haven't been able to do, or take that vacation that you were really not so sure you should do. Staying calm when unforeseen expenses arise, whether that's medical expenses, home repairs. I think it just allows my clients to see that in the long view and see that they're going to be okay. Help siblings, nephews, or nieces, or aging parents when those financial needs come up. Again, I've talked about donating to charity, changing career. Again, that kind of goes along with retiring early potentially as well. Maybe it's a career that's not as financially lucrative. Start a business, become an angel investor or real estate investor, or again, just simply have peace of mind that you're going to be okay. More money doesn't need to equal more problems. So I do see that being a very valuable part of our conversations with my clients. So as we conclude here, I want to give you this calculator, which is, I think, one of the better calculators that I see for at least trying to figure out where you stand on a financial plan perspective. And this is called the FIRE calculator. So that's becoming financially independent and retiring early. So this is going to be geared to what age can I retire and live off my assets, which is that concept that I talked about earlier. So engaging-data.com/FIRE calculator. And let's see if I can get over to this really quickly here and show you what I have done. I had a nice little calculation here for you. Looks like we had to refresh the page here. So bear with me. Oh, guess our calculator is not working today. I don't know what's going on with that. Well, either way, Engaging Data is a great resource. I really would encourage people to log on to that. It's going to allow you to put in your own assets, your age, what you're saving on a yearly basis, and it'll tell you, right up front, you can retire at age 51, based on your target of 1.7 million in assets and a 4% withdrawal rate. That's when you're going to be able to retire. And you can really play around with all those different variables. I really wish this was working because it's a really engaging sort of calculator where I can enter in things and it's going to move as soon as I enter in that data. So that's too bad. Engaging Data is going to have to figure out what's going on there with their with their servers. But not everything's supposed to go perfectly in these kinds of webinars, I suppose. So in conclusion, our website, fncadvisor.com. I'd encourage you to visit that. There's a ton of good resources in here. A lot of calculators here as well that you can try out. And then if you're a dentist, you can click here to get a little bit more specific information around you. I've written an ebook that goes over a lot of the things that dentists need to consider, and especially these last chapters about accumulating assets, selling your practice, and thinking about different tax strategies. You may find that very useful. You can get it in a PDF or a Kindle format. So just feel free to visit that website and sign up for that, whether you're a dentist or not. And then beyond that, if you have any questions for me, my contact information is here. I'd encourage you to go visit our blog, where we try to write a lot of different articles throughout the year. And then also visit my LinkedIn, where I try to post different things as well. Okay, so again, hopefully everybody had found this to be useful. Sit down, make a financial plan, revisit that with your spouse at least once a year, whether you do that with a financial advisor or just on your own. I think it's very helpful to do, and I think will help you most importantly with today and making your decisions today, knowing what your future is going to look like. It should be very liberating. So hopefully you've gotten that message, and I look forward to hearing from some of you soon, and best of luck with everybody, and I hope to see you in our webinars. We'll probably have some more in the fall, so keep an eye out for that. Thanks, everybody, and I'll stick around if you have any questions in our chat, but otherwise, take care.